Today is a brand new day, and I'm saying that for obvious reasons. As you'll notice from the date of this video, this lines up with the release of Spider-Man Brand New Day, the next chapter of MCU Tom Holland's version of Spider-Man. But I'm not reviewing the movie today like I usually do on release days. Instead, I want to talk about the bigger picture this film was bringing into focus. The real question behind the title, why does Spider-Man remain so big? Why does this character hit such massive popularity? I won't spend too long on this, but just how it's a quick celebration of a legacy that arrives at a weird moment. People do have mixed feelings about superhero movies right now, whether it be DC or Marvel, where we talked a lot about superhero fatigue, where the truth is, the idea of that is both real and not real, with more caveats than most people would admit. And how in this case, it makes it especially hard to believe either extreme, because as I'm making this, the opening projections for Brand New Day are sitting at $300 million, the highest domestic opening weekend since Avengers Endgame in 2019. And that is a remarkable number for a film that picks off after No Way Home, because this one does not have the nostalgia boost of Tobey or Andrew, it does not have the multi-Spider-Man event or the same villain spectacle. This instead is the aftermath story where the world has forgotten who Peter Parker is, but not who Spider-Man is. So you have to wonder why this version has stayed so massive across years of different iterations of the character. Sure, this movie features the return of those like Hulk a lot of people wanted, and the Punisher is in it too, but that doesn't really explain the draw of Spider-Man as a film. It's mainly Peter himself, and I really want to talk about the feeling he gives us, that feeling that still makes him so popular, something that doesn't relate to how some people chalk it up to Tom Holland or Zendaya's star power. I mean, they are both popular, but that doesn't fully explain it either. Where I'm more meaning it's not about who's playing the character that counts, it's how deeply the character resonates. And Spider-Man keeps delivering on the quality of his character more than anything else. So let's go back to the beginning, because the reason Spider-Man still works today is basically rooted in the same reason he worked in 1962. Because Stan Lee didn't set out to create another perfect untouchable superhero. He specifically wanted the opposite at the time. He wanted someone who was a teenager, an ordinary kid who got bullied, struggled with money, worried about school, and felt awkward around girls, and still had to deal with real life even after getting powers. And Peter Parker wasn't supposed to be cool or invincible. He was supposed to feel like us, and that idea was a terrible one at the time, according to his boss. In other words, the industry believed that they only wanted idealized larger-than-life figures, someone who already had it all figured out, someone you looked up to, not someone you recognized. But Stan believed the opposite was true. He thought readers, especially younger ones, would connect harder with the hero who felt human, who messed up, carried guilt, and had to grow into responsibility instead of already owning it. And of course, afterwards, it did sell well, selling so well that good men suddenly loved the idea and ordered a full series. What that moment proved is still the core of why Spider-Man stays massive. Audiences just don't want power fantasies, they want someone who feels like they could be living next door, someone who struggles and doesn't disappear just because they put on a mask. The industry thought relatability would weaken a superhero, but Stan thought it would be the whole reason people even cared. And 60 years later, right now, that bet is still paying off. But comics alone aren't the full story. The movies, as we know, took Spider-Man to an entirely different level, and in a lot of ways, 2002 was that real turning point for many of us. And before Sam Raimi's Spider-Man hit theaters, Marvel just never had a true mainstream culture-shifting blockbuster. They had the small wins like X-Men and Blade, but nothing that felt too big and universal at the time. Comic book movies still carried a lot of stigma, and they weren't guaranteed tentpoles. A lot of them did see them as niche. But then of course Spider-Man came out and it changed the math. It became the first movie to hit over $100 million in a single weekend and gross more than $800 million worldwide at the time, making it the highest grossing superhero film at the time of its release. And more importantly, a film like that just didn't play to comic book fans, it became a cultural event where suddenly everyone knew the suit, the theme, the upside down kiss, and with great power comes great responsibility. Tobey's Peter made the character feel real and human on a scale that comics never really quite reached for a general audience. And that film proved something crucial. Spider-Man wasn't just a successful comic book character, he was a movie star material man. He could open huge, he could carry sequels, and he could stay relevant across generations from 1962. And even though the film rights belonged to Sony, the success still boosted Marvel's overall brand, and showed Hollywood that these characters could be serious money and serious cultural forces. And also in many ways, the modern superhero boom, the one that eventually led to the MCU, started in 2002 with the movies swinging into theaters like Spider-Man. And from that point, every new version of Spider-Man on screen from Tobey, Andrew, and Tom, even the animated ones, have been building on that foundation that they laid down. The character was already beloved, and the movies just made him unavoidable. And then of course the MCU era took everything to a new different level. Of course, beforehand, you had the success of the Avengers and all that, and where Tom Holland's Spider-Man first swung into Civil War, he wasn't just another hero joining the team, he was the kid in the room. Surrounded by adults like Iron Man and Captain America, Peter Parker was the youngest and the most inexperienced and most human. While everyone else was a polished Avenger dealing with world-ending stakes, he was literally still a high school student who had to sneak out of class, worry about homework, and hide the secret from his aunt. That contrast is exactly why he stood out, and the MCU threw him deep in fast. One minute he's stopping bike thieves, and next he's fighting aliens in space and standing on a battlefield against Thanos. He goes from the friendly neighborhood Spider-Man to literally dying in Tony Stark's arms on Titan, only to come back 5 years later to the world that moved on without him. The scale of those threats were massive, but the character never stopped feeling small in the best way possible. That's the key. Even while the universe around him got bigger and more cosmic and had a bunch of heroes who are gods, Peter still stayed grounded. He still had money problems, still struggled with relationships, and still made mistakes. He still felt the weight of responsibility in a way that felt personal and not just heroic. The other Avengers were just dealing with the fate of the universe, but Spider-Man was dealing with the fate of the universe and still wondering if he could make college. And that combination is rare. Most characters either stay street level or fully graduate into spectacle, but Spider-Man somehow manages to do both without losing that part that made people care about him in the first place. He becomes the more emotional center of some of the MCU's bigger moments precisely because he never stopped being the ordinary kid with extraordinary powers. And in a franchise full of gods, geniuses, and super soldiers, the teen from Queens remains the most relatable person on that screen. And that relatability is still the reason audiences still keep showing up for him. In the entire Home trilogy, you can see that full arc of what it means for Peter to grow into a hero. Homecoming is about a kid who's given everything, but learns to be more than that to make him Spider-Man. And Far From Home pushed that further. Now he's dealing with the aftermath of losing Tony and the weight of that legacy, and the temptation to become something bigger than he is. Where No Way Home brings it in. It doesn't raise the stakes, it forces Peter to confront every version of the path he could take. Meeting the other two Spider-Man isn't just fan service or nostalgia, it's a living reminder of what happens when the job costs you everything. Toby's Peter had lived with the guilt and loneliness for years, Andrew's been broken by loss, and Tom is standing at the same exact crossroads that they've already walked through. And the ending is the purest expression of what Spider-Man has always been about. Peter choosing to erase himself from everyone's memory so the ones he loved can be saved. He gives up the life he wanted, the relationships, the recognition, and the support system because the alternative would hurt too many others in both ways. And that's not the move of a god or an Avenger who's used to winning on a cosmic scale, that's the move of someone who understands that responsibility sometimes means walking away from everything that made you happy. And loss doesn't turn him into a symbol, it keeps him human and keeps him grounded. And after No Way Home, Peter Parker is more alone than he's ever been, and how that somehow makes him more Spider-Man than he's ever been at the point. Not becoming larger than life, but learning how to stay small enough to feel it. Which brings us to Brand New Day. This is the first time we've seen Peter fully living with the choice he made at the end of No Way Home. The world doesn't remember him, MJ and Ned had moved on, there's no safety net, no one checking in, no one who knows the kid under the mask, where he's just Spider-Man now, full-time, alone, and still showing up for a city that has no idea who Peter Parker even is. And that's the part that makes this movie feel more important. After years of bigger and bigger spectacle, alien invasions, multiversal crossovers, the weight of the entire MCU rests on his shoulders at times, and Brand New Day puts him back into the ground. And as we discussed, there's still room for the larger Marvel world with the Hulk and Punisher in the mix, but the heart of the film isn't about stacking cameos or resetting the status quo. It's about whether this version of Spider-Man can stay true to what he's always been when the only person left is himself. And the people are just choosing to show up for it. As we said before, the opening projections have been climbing hard past 300 and going to the highest since Avengers Endgame. And this is not a normal thing for a superhero film to do right now. In a climate where lots of the genre is struggling to recapture old magic, a Spider-Man film with no multiversal gimmick and a more personal story is tracking like a genuine event. And that really says something. It says that audiences aren't just chasing the biggest crossover or the loudest spectacle, they're still responding to the same thing Stan Lee bet on back in 1962, a kid trying to do the right thing even when it cost him everything. So Brand New Day feels like the purest version of that idea that the MCU has given us yet. No Peter becoming a god, no Peter getting his old life back the easy way, just Peter Parker still swinging through a world that forgot him but still choosing Spider-Man anyway. And that's the one thing that matters, because at the end of the day, Spider-Man isn't the strongest, isn't the smartest, and isn't even the most powerful or the most connected person on Earth. He's just the kid from Queens who decided that if he can help, he should. That's the entire character. No destiny written in the stars, no ancient prophecy, no billion-dollar suit that makes the choice for him, just a regular person who keeps showing up. Because with great power comes great responsibility. And that's why the line, "Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man" still hits after all these years. It's not branding, it's the mission statement. While other heroes are off saving the universe or fighting gods, he's the one still swinging through the same streets of New York, stopping the same everyday problems, and checking on the same people who might not even ever know his name, where he doesn't need the world to remember Peter Parker, he just needs to be there. And that simple idea, the duty to be there for your city or whoever needs it, no matter what the personal cost is what keeps him standing when so many other characters start to feel distant. He's not above us, he is one of us. An average guy who got his powers and decided the only acceptable use of them was to help people around him. That's the legacy, and that's why this movie still works. Not because he's the biggest hero in the room, but because he's the one who never left that neighborhood. I'm all done. Goodbye.